welcome to a one-on-one session with Thought Leader by Seekho. Our today's thought leader is Naman Tekriwal. He is he is a hardworking, dedicated, and confident person studying BBA management at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. He is a co-founder of Breer and Rural Invest. And briefing you a little about Seekho. Seekho is the first micro-learning based community wherein you can learn just anything you want in a minute. In short, it is a world where knowledge meets seekers. Now, passing on the stage to our thought leader, I would like Naman to introduce himself to our audience.
Sure, thank you so much. Yep, so I am Naman Tekriwal. As you introduced, I am a sophomore at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. And I got introduced to entrepreneurship very early on in life. I started my first company at the age of 14. And I sold my first company when I was in high school at the age of 17. And ever since then, my life has revolved around entrepreneurship and community service. I have the element of social service and community in every startup which I have started. Currently, I'm working on two fully funded startups. One is Breer Limited, which is in Hong Kong, where we collect surplus bread from the bakeries of Hong Kong and we use it to make craft beer. And the other is Rural Invest in India, where we are promoting financial literacy and planning amongst the different stakeholders of the rural population. And that is in India. So that we do through a wealth management application. So a bit about me is that I studied and I did my high schooling from India. I'm born and brought up in Delhi, so I'm completely a Delhiite. And about my interests, I love listening to music, I love reading books, and at the same time, I have been a state level chess player. So yes, I think all of the experiences in my life participating in national and international competitions, representing India at the international stage multiple times, have led me to this journey of personal development and landed me in this place where I have the opportunity to make a difference in the world, and that is what I try to do and strive for every day. Thank you.
We are glad to have you here, and I'm sure that our audience will benefit from what all guidance you'll be giving them today. Yeah. So now to tell you that now we'll be moving on to rap seconds. So moving on, yeah. So first question, your ideal dream location where you plan to settle down?
California, United States, because of the startup ecosystem in California.
Okay, even though you have experienced Hong Kong, still.
Yep, I would still want to end up in Silicon Valley and be part of the ecosystem in the United States.
Yeah. Okay. Second question, the music genre when you want to calm yourself down?
I tend to listen to inspirational music and soothing music. So I start my mornings with something like a Shiv Tandav Shrotam just to pump up my energy. And I end my days with something very soothing, which, doesn't even have words, but only, a soothing music just to calm me down.
Okay. So instrumental type of music. Yeah.
Yes.
Third question, the one famous personality you want to play chess with?
One famous personality. Good question. I think I would like to play chess with Mark Cuban, because I read in his book that he also liked to play chess because it helps him concentrate more, and he's a very successful entrepreneur. So yeah, I think not a chess player because I'm not that good, but somebody like an entrepreneur I think would help me also. I'll have a shot at winning, I guess.
Okay, but you did told us that you have won some championship in chess, national.
Yeah, I'm a state level champion in chess, yeah. But I don't think so that cuts the slice for me being that good.
Okay. Fourth question, given a chance to write a book, what would you choose to write?
I think I would write about my experiences of doing so much in the field of entrepreneurship at an early age, because right now we don't have many resources for students who are my age, but we definitely have this need of students starting early for entrepreneurship. So if I could disseminate my journey into a book starting from, say, when I was 12 years old to now when I'm 21 years old, I think that would benefit a lot of readers.
Okay. So you want to write a book on your entrepreneurial journey, and so that audience can benefit from your
Yes.
book.
Yes.
I'm sure if you write it someday, it will be the bestseller. I'm sure.
Hopefully.
Fifth question. Yes, definitely. In fact, fifth and the last question. One lesson you learned from life and tell every other person about.
That failure or fail means first attempt in learning. Wear your failures as badges of pride, and if you fall 10 times, rise 11 times, because life will push you down all the time. But if you can rise up every time and continue striving towards your long-term goal, then you are in for something glorious and making a difference in the world.
I don't know why, but I think I have I hear every entrepreneur talking about this, that failure is the first step, because I think entrepreneurs do face many failures, so that is why. Yeah.
Indeed.
Okay, now we are done with the rapid fire round. Now next round will be Q&A. So there will be some serious questions you have to answer. So moving on.
Sure.
Yes. So first question. Some hacks or tips for planning your way into the non-foreign universities.
I think a hack or tip for getting into any university is multilateral, and there are two elements to it. The first is that while you're in your high school, focus on your academics and try to learn as much as possible from the subjects you're being taught, and try to make sure that while you have the most fun in high school, but you make sure that your academics are always balanced and you end up getting good marks, because those marks will be truly valuable when you have to reach to any university, be it in India or be it abroad. And second would be to build your story and your profile. So in high school, until you reach the age of 18, there are a lot of opportunities around you. Your teachers, your school will throw a lot of opportunities to you, and my advice to all of the students would be to grab those opportunities with both hands. Until my age as well, I'm still 21, and the key is that do not say no. Like any opportunity which comes to you, be it drama, be it poetry, be it competitions, be it anything, just say yes, because it will be an experience and you will learn a lot from that experience. And if you can build a machinery of these experiences and curate them into a story, this story helps you go a long way and reach any university, your dream university. And the same happened with me. My whole story revolved around entrepreneurship, and my purpose of coming to Hong Kong was also pursuing entrepreneurship. So when I met like-minded people in HKUST and I started my company, I felt that life came full circle for me, because my goal was that I would start in high school, build my first company, then come to Hong Kong, meet other people and start another company. So the whole journey of you getting into a college starts from high school. You need to focus on your academics as well as your extracurricular activities. And if you do that, you will be you will go to your dream university, be it in India or be it in abroad.
Okay, so making the most in the high school period, right? Yeah. Second question, what does the role of a business development intern entail?
So I feel a business development intern in many ways is a mini CEO. It depends a lot on who you are working with. So I took my first internship when I was age 16, and that was also in a startup. So, that was in a startup where it was my boss, a couple of other interns and me. So I actually got to sit in a CEO's chair while I was only an intern. Because the boss, my CEO, he relied on me for almost everything, for creating a pitch deck, for creating a business plan, for giving him valuable suggestions at the age of 16. So I feel a business development intern in many ways is performing every role which a CEO will do, because you are in an outreach team, so you know how you have to reach out to people for strategic partnerships, or how to project your company in a good light. And a business development intern at the end of the day has to do all of it, because your key task is to develop the business. So be it marketing, be it outreach, be it talking to different stakeholders, everything falls under the gamut of the services which a business development intern has to provide. So I feel that it is a very generalist kind of a role. Like, you don't require a very specific skill to be a business development intern, but you need a lot of creativity, a lot of innovation, and a lot of dedication, because I feel a business development intern has to channelize the same spirit that, yes, this is my company as well. If you're in the back end, probably you don't have to do that. But a business development intern will always be in the front end. And anybody who's in the front end, they should know that, this is my company, and whoever is talking about, this company, I will go in and sell it. So there is this one line which my boss taught me when I was 16 years old. I still follow it. It's the business development principle is ABS, which is always be selling. If you are always selling as a business development intern, as an entrepreneur, you will flourish in whatever you're doing, because you are good at communicating what you're supposed to do.
Okay, one thing which I absolutely loved was that you did your internship at the age of 16. I mean, I don't know. I have entered into college and I am doing internships right now. I am 18, 19. I'm doing now. Oh my God, it's huge. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, you said something about making pitch deck and all such things.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, something this is something which a street type of thing which you see in entrepreneur. Like, I can see this in you. Yeah.
Indeed.
Third question: what is transfer pricing all about?
So I got introduced to the concept of transfer pricing when I took my first internship at Ernst & Young, and I was working in the transfer pricing department, which falls under the International Trade and Taxation Services. And my first day, I was extremely confused. I was lost as to what is happening here, because this was just all new to me. But that experience, first of all, helped me know that I'm not made for that world. I'm made for entrepreneurship. I'm not made for a corporate life. But to all the viewers, if they want to know what transfer pricing is, it is actually relevant for any business which operates on a global level. So the day I expand any of my startup to another country, I will also be engaged in transfer pricing. So what transfer pricing in the very simple terms mean is that, say there is Apple US and there is Apple India and there is Samsung India. Now, if Apple US is providing a service to Apple India, they know that they're incentivized to provide it at a cheap cost. And if they provide it at a cheap cost, Apple India will be taxed less because they got the service for less, right? At the same time, if they're providing a service to Samsung India, they will provide the service at a higher cost, so they will be taxed higher. But this creates discrepancies in terms of taxation. So transfer pricing is the price at which both companies will have to be taxed, irrespective of the fact that one was a subsidiary of Apple and the other wasn't. So it basically is a concept which makes sure that there is no discrepancy or inaccuracy in global trade, and there is a streamlined process for every company to be taxed equally, and no companies can exploit these loopholes of being subsidiaries and creating different companies and just paying less taxes out of it. So I feel for any company who's involved in global trade, any company who has companies offshore will need to have the knowledge of transfer pricing, and getting to know about this concept and working at EY, working on transfer pricing reports, reading everything about it made me understand that how how difficult it is to run a global business. Like, it sounds very fancy that okay, I can have a company in India, I can expand it to Singapore, Hong Kong, and all of these places, but the complications increase simultaneously. So, having a familiarity with concepts like transfer pricing and many other concepts related to global trade always works in the favor of anybody who wants to start a business, or who will be working in an MNC, because they will be, familiar or introduced to this concept somewhere down the line. So I got to know about this at the age of 18, and I was very fortunate that I know this. So now when I expand Breer to say a foreign offshore country, I will keep this in mind.
Yes. I didn't know about transfer pricing at all. Like, I got the idea from your introduction itself. Now moving on to our question 4. Being a founder of two organizations, Breer and Rural Invest, your guide to building a successful startup.
My guide and my only hack to build a successful startup is be observant and be proactive. So, and that is honestly the crux of being an entrepreneur, that you have to be observant of the problems which are around you. And if you identify a problem which is big enough, which is worth solving, and people need a solution for the same, then you need to be proactive and act on the problem. Because many people are like, okay, we know this problem, we have this idea, but we're not acting on it, which means you've crossed stage 1 but you have not crossed stage 2. And what's the harm in just going ahead and starting? Even a failed startup will teach you much more than 10 internships combined. So the key is be observant, followed by being proactive. If you can create a mix of these two, you can be a successful entrepreneur. And at the same time, I think you have to be inquisitive, you have to be curious. Like, if you see something's wrong, you need to be curious as to why it's wrong. Like, there is this very famous concept of design thinking, which is, very popularized these days. And the key to design thinking at the stage of empathy is asking the question why. The more you ask the question why, the more you get to know about the problem. So if you are inquisitive enough, if you're curious enough, just keep asking why until you articulate the problem to such an extent that you can be proactive and act on the solution. So I think that would be the key of starting any startup, followed by, now this is starting, and followed by you have to be committed, dedicated, and manage your time effectively if you want to start a company. And if you're not 100% dedicated and motivated by the idea, by the problem, then there is no point starting the company. Like, you have to be driven by the cause and by the purpose, not by the idea of how sexy it is to be an entrepreneur. Like, for me, the fact that I'm able to help so many rural people through Rural Invest, and the fact that I'm able to contribute to the planet through Breer keeps me driven to work on my companies, rather than the fact that, okay, I get so much fame, I get so much popularity for being an entrepreneur. All of these are just byproducts of the same, which I use to just make a meaningful difference to the world.
I get the idea. See, you told about the problem of bread wastage, right? So I am sure that people must have seen it. People must be aware of it, but they didn't do anything substantial to take care of it. And you did. So this is what differs an entrepreneur. Yeah. Moving on to question 5. How to ideate your plan for a startup?
I think learning from our last answer only, ideation is a process. First of all, ideation is a process which should have no judgment. Like, if you are in a room and you are ideating about, okay, how do I create my business plan, be ready to be open to even the most absurd and the most extraordinary and even the most unfeasible ideas. Because the more you are imaginative, the more you will end up at the right solutions. So the process of ideation and the process of brainstorming is very crucial in the whole startup development process, because every day you're thinking as to what can we do new and what can we do different. And that is how ideation works, that you need to be constantly on your feet about what can I add to the business? How can I make the business different from the other companies which exist in the world today? So a very simple example. So before Breer as well, craft beer exists in Hong Kong. There are about 40 craft beer brands which exist in Hong Kong. Brewer's probably the 41st. But how do we differentiate ourselves from the first 40 has also to be decided in the ideation stage. That, what is our value proposition? What is our unique selling point? Everything has to be ideated beforehand. And this is the crux of brainstorming, that, take a blank whiteboard, take a blank canvas, and just keep on writing stuff, because every detail will be valuable somewhere down the line. And again, the point is that customer discovery is key. That, you might think that, you have the greatest idea in the world, but you might be in your own echo chamber and you might never get to know that whether the customer needs it or not. So, there have been so many examples. So let's take the example of Bhavesh Agarwal from Ola. 2010, when he was starting Ola, Commonwealth Games was being held in India. This guy, who is worth over $1 billion right now, was standing in front of the Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium, distributing pamphlets and talking to people that if I send a taxi to your home and you come to watch this game in the stadium, will you do that? This is how you get to know that people are facing a problem and we need a solution for it. And why are people facing that problem? So customer discovery is very important. The more you talk to the customer, the more you get insights for ideation. Use those insights and then empathize with the customer. That if I would have been in the place of the customer, what are the problems which I would have felt and how would I solve them? So if you can put yourself in the place of a customer, that is the strategy of perfect ideation and perfect brainstorming. And then just be open and imaginative. Be open to the absurd ideas, be open to everything, and then narrow down the funnel. Like, start with a huge funnel and come to a narrow conclusion. And that is how great ideas are made.
Okay, this age-old business mantra of customer is king, I think it still stands pretty relevant.
And it will always.
Okay. Sixth question. The biggest bottlenecks you faced as an entrepreneur and how to overcome them?
Biggest bottlenecks, I think this answer is also led because one of the bottlenecks which I've always faced is that you're too young to be an entrepreneur, which I feel is absolute bullshit. Sorry for my language, but it's absolute bullshit, because there is no age for you to be an entrepreneur. If you have an idea, people should be acceptive of that idea, and people should know and people should support you for the fact that you're trying to make a difference in this world. So the first bottleneck will always be people judging you. People will be judging you that, hey, this man is not focusing on academics. This man is building a company which probably will not see a future. And I experienced that all of my high school. But I think beyond that, the bottlenecks as an entrepreneur, are very sector agnostic and industry specific. Like with Rural Invest, while the idea is great, there are several bottlenecks because we want to talk to a population through a wealth management solution, which is a digital solution, but India faces the problem of digital literacy. So you need to literally go to the villages, you need to go to the tier 3, tier 4 cities and talk to the people as to how the solution will work for you. So the traditional model of how you can utilize social media will not work for a startup like Rural Invest. So many bottlenecks will be company specific and industry specific. Say something like, with Breer, we face the problem that, how do we convince more and more retailers to house our products? Because, I have my product, but if I go to a 7-Eleven, if I go to a Circle K, if I go to any other convenience store and I say, house my product, they'll be like, okay, it's way too highly priced. You need to get the price down. But to get the price down, you need to achieve high volumes. For high volumes, you need more money. So everything builds into the fact that, more money is also a bottleneck because fundraising is not that easy. So every company will have its own bottleneck, but every bottleneck also has its own solution. And that solution is the entrepreneur himself. If the entrepreneur knows the nitty-gritties of his company, the entrepreneur will fight it out. The entrepreneur will solve the bottlenecks and will make sure that the company can flourish. But this will only be possible if we solve the primary bottleneck, that the entrepreneur is not bogged down by what the people are saying, and the entrepreneur believes in his conviction. If, people said to Jeff Bezos all his life that internet won't make him rich. I am sorry, I don't know why the lights turned down, but I think I can continue. I'm still visible. Yep. So he was doubted all his life, and I see so many interviews where people tell him that people told him that in the 1995 you won't be able to become rich by the internet, and look at him today, because he had conviction in himself. So if you can solve that primary bottleneck, all other bottlenecks in every other startup can be solved.
That crab story was wonderful. Like I have read it, and the way you used it here, it was wonderful. And also you mentioned one thing about you mentioned that yes, be open to ideas, and just do not fall into the judgment of people. Like they say things, you have to do what you have to do. Yeah, I think it's wonderful. Now moving on to our 7th question: what is Cases Over Coffee, and how can it help you?
So Cases Over Coffee is actually a company and an initiative started by 2 former INSEAD graduates. And it's basically a company which promotes, which basically prepares management consultants to, prepare themselves to enter into the major management consultant companies like McKinsey, Bain, Boston. And all of these, like how I got involved with the company was because of the fact that I do have this dream of getting, into consultancy, management consultancy, innovation consultancy. And I wanted to familiarize myself with the whole ecosystem of how do you prepare to become a management consultant? How do you solve case studies? How do you talk to different clients? And when they launched this strategy associate program, which was an exclusive program that they would hire only one person from one university, I jumped onto the opportunity and became a strategy associate for the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, because I felt that it was very important for me to understand at this age that how do I need to prepare myself to become a management consultant if I need to be one. Great people to work with. They help you learn a lot, and it has been a very transformative journey for me, learning to, and that just helps me in skill development. Like when I crack case with them, I just get to know so much about, okay, this was another tangent, or this was another vertical, or this was another stream of thought in which I could have also thought in, but I never did. But when you meet with people who are cracking cases, who have been cracking cases all their life, you get to know that, okay, how you can adopt different stream of thoughts as well. So yes, this is what the company does, and this is how I am also associated with the company.
Yes. And I think consulting and entrepreneurship is somewhat related. Like in consulting, you do problem solving, and it is the same with entrepreneurship.
Indeed, yeah.
Our 8th question: what is the Young Tycoons business all about?
So Young Tycoons Business Challenge is, I like to call it my baby. And Young Tycoons Business Challenge came into being, like the idea of YTBC, we call it as YTBC as an acronym. It came into being when I was 15 years old, and when I was pursuing my first startup while I was in high school. And I realized the fruits of high school entrepreneurship, and what entrepreneurship can teach you at this early age when I was 15. And I felt that experience of being a high school entrepreneur helped me a lot, and helped me reach where I am today, where I'm running 2 companies simultaneously, and both are doing extremely well. So I felt that last year, when all of us were in lockdown, I felt that all these high school students are not being able to go to school, talk to people, meet different people, and that is just detrimental to their overall personality and skill development. And I felt that entrepreneurship is the solution for this, because like entrepreneurship is the perfect avenue for skill development. And that is why I just called a couple of people. I'm like, and the idea of creating this business competition was sown back in 2014 or 15. But I waited on it for 5 years. I reached college. I myself became an entrepreneur. And then I was like, now is the perfect time to launch a competition for high school students all across the world. And I don't call it as the business plan competition. Whenever somebody asks me that what is YTBC, I say it's a movement and it's not a competition. The movement is that we have to prepare next generation entrepreneurs. We have to inculcate the entrepreneurial mindset in them when they are early, in their early age, like when they're 14, 15, 16. They need to be thinking of entrepreneurial ideas, and they need to have the thought that I don't need to be a job seeker. I can also be a job giver. So that is what YTBC aims for and strives for. We call ourselves an entrepreneurship carnival because of the resources we have amassed for our, participants for the competition. We have partners like the Harvard University, HKUST, Vadvani Foundation, the United Nations, and all of these partners work with our participants to curate and foster entrepreneurship. And it's great that you mention it, because we have our pitching round in the next 6 days, and we just ended screening our applications. And in the first year of a competition, I didn't even imagine that we would get 6,500 applications from 48 countries of the world for the competition. And the task of narrowing down those 6,500 teams to 500 teams was a very difficult task, because all of them were great ideas. But the response to the competition itself told me that we're on the right track. And students want this solution. Students want a platform where they can come and pitch their ideas and learn from industry experts, where industry experts can work with them. So yes, I'm very excited about the next 2 months, where we will be, culminating our YTBC journey, and we will be, ending YTBC 2021 and starting preparations for YTBC 2022. And I see this becoming a movement for high school entrepreneurship and create a dent in the entrepreneurship ecosystem within the next 5 to 7 years, where students will look forward that YTBC is coming up, I need to prepare myself, and every student will become an entrepreneur with YTBC, and this is what we aim to achieve.
Yes, so the aim of YTBC is to sow those entrepreneurial seeds from the high school itself.
Indeed.
Yeah. I get it. Yes. Our second last question: things to keep in mind when planning to crack an internship at EY.
Okay, things to keep in mind. I wouldn't say EY. I think with any internship, the process remains the same. That the things to keep in mind are, what are you going to pitch about yourself? So, like when you're applying for any company, you are pitching yourself, you are selling yourself. So your CV is probably the executive summary, and your interview is probably the customer interaction, right? So your CV will have to be something which makes the reader curious that, okay, this person has done this experience, and I want to talk to this person, invite him for an interview and talk to him about his experiences. So for any internship you want to crack, focus on what is your pitch. So you can't be a biotechnologist and go to a finance company and say that I want to use my biotechnology skills in a finance company, because then they don't care. Right? So what is your pitch has to be curated according to the company. So when I interned at EY, my whole pitch was that I've been a global citizen. I study at a global university. I'm running a company in Hong Kong, and I want to learn about, businesses and how businesses operate on a global scale. And that is how I ended up in the transfer pricing department of EY, because my pitch and my objective for that internship was very clear. And that is how you crack any internship. If you want an internship at a startup, your objective should be that I want to learn the most at a startup, because startups are small teams. You will get to learn a lot, and you will also have to work a lot. So your pitch has to be about learning. Every internship opportunity is only about learning, and learning will always be a work in progress. Like the more you learn, the more you enhance your skills. And that is how, that should be the objective of every internship. And for you to prepare yourself for any internship, the strategy or the hack is very simple. Just make sure your CV says about you in an executive summary, and when you go to an interview, you are honest to yourself, and you communicate your story in such a manner that the other person finds it convincing. So you are selling yourself. If you are able to sell yourself effectively, you will bag that internship.
Yes, and I completely agree with the point you said about startup. Like I currently am working with a startup, and I know how it just makes you a better person, and how it changes you, how it completely upskills you. I know that. Yeah. Last question. Things to keep in mind when going for a financial analyst position.
So, for a financial analyst position, first of all, the first question you need to answer is that, do you love numbers or not? Like, there are people who are good at maths, but there are people who love numbers. Like, coming from a traditional Marwadi family whose, entire generation has only been in business, every dinner conversation has been about business and numbers. So for me, I enjoy numbers. So as a financial analyst, you need to love numbers first. And if you love those numbers, then you need to see that what is the role of a financial analyst? The role of a financial analyst is to analyze companies owing to their fundamental performance. And fundamental performance basically means analyzing the numbers and how the company is performing. So if you love reading about companies, if you love reading about what companies are doing and seeing a progression or growth in those companies, then a financial analyst position is suitable for you. Something very similar is a technical analyst position, where all you have to do is read charts and graphs and create everything from charts and graphs. I don't enjoy that. I can't do it. I am not that talented. I don't have that knowledge, and I know that I don't want to develop that knowledge because I know I'll not be good at it. Like, that's a weakness, and I acknowledge that weakness. But for a financial analyst position, I think the key is that enjoy numbers, as I say, and this is the primary crux of you to be a financial analyst. But beyond that, I think just about your curiosity to learn about companies, and then bringing that company in, breathing life into the numbers of the company through your Excel calculations. Like, when I worked in my first financial analyst position, I didn't even see what the company is. I saw who I was working under. I was working under Mr. Aditya Sood, who was the ex-chief investment officer for ICICI Prudential. And he was an industry seasoned professional for 30 years. So when I got to work under him, every word he said was, an year of experience for me. So you work under the right people, you get to know a lot of stuff, and you get to know a lot of skills in a financial analyst position, and it prepares you for logical thinking, because those numbers, every number is a story in itself. That why did the revenue increase from 2000 to 3000, right? Every number will be a story in itself. So it will improve your logical and your critical thinking, that because you will be able to create the story behind the numbers. And as a financial analyst, the rule is everything is finally built into the price of the company. So if you are able to amalgamate all the information which you have curated and then make a decision if the company is good or not based on the stock price, then that a financial analyst position is for you. And if all of this excites you, then only go for a financial analyst position. Otherwise, there are several other positions which are waiting for you. Somebody could like technical analysis, somebody could like algorithmic trading, which is a new trend. You use Python to trade in the market. I don't enjoy all of it, but I love numbers. That is why financial analysis and fundamental analysis is something which I love to do.
Yeah, it is like I saw the movie The Man Who Knew Infinity, and in there Ramanujan was in love with numbers. So as in, like, you have repeated love numbers so many times that I think it is very similar to that. Yeah.
Indeed.
So this is the end, guys. We are going to wrap up our one-on-one session, but stay tuned, as we would be back with another thought leader similar to Nikhil to discuss some more intriguing. To Naman, discuss some more intriguing questions you didn't know about.
Sure. Thank you so much. It was great speaking to, the audience, and I hope that they can, learn something from my, sense of wisdom and knowledge. And for anybody listening, if you want to reach out, please feel free to reach out to me on my LinkedIn. I'm the most active replier on LinkedIn. You receive a reply in no time possible. So yes, thank you so much to the Seco team for inviting me, and I hope I could be of help today.
Yeah, you were absolutely of help. Thank you, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.